Peace. Welcome back to the Voices of Reason show. Today we have a very special guest, a return guest, the one and only Miss Brenda Council. Hello, man.
Hey, Russell, good to see you. Thanks for the invitation to come back. It's been a while.
Yeah, definitely. We had to get you back and see what's going on new because you always got something brewing.
Still out there trying to serve the people. We're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
I admire that so much. So for last time that you came, we talked everything about like what you had going down. And a lot of people didn't know anything about you. Could you give like a brief history? Because I know you got a lot, but I mean that in the best way.
Great. Yeah, well, I've been here a long time, thank God.
Definitely.
Most people know that, I'm born and raised in Omaha. I have spent almost my entire life in North Omaha.
Right.
My parents both migrated here like, the parents of many of my friends who came up. Now, my parents didn't come from the deep South. My father came from Oklahoma and my mother came from Kansas.
Right.
And so, growing up in North Omaha on 24th and Pinckney Street, went to Lothrop Grade School, what was then Horseman Junior High, now the King Science Center at Mann, and graduated from Central. And when I was in the third grade, I made my first career decision. I decided in the third grade I wanted to be a school teacher.
Wow.
Because the people who made the biggest impression on me outside of my parents were my teachers. I mean, I was blessed to come up in an era, with the kind of teachers that we had back when I was in elementary and junior high school. And I just looked up to them so much. And I was also blessed that my mother had two sisters and a brother who were school teachers. So, I wanted to emulate them. And as a kid growing up, they would give me, used teachers' manuals and flashcards and stuff like that. And I made my younger brother and sister play school with me every day after school. And believe me, they didn't care much. They didn't care much for that. So, I decided that, I would pursue a career in education. And I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, enrolled in the Teachers College, graduating with a degree in secondary education. And I was certified to teach social studies, grades 7 through 12. But my last year at Nebraska, I got into a debate, some would say argument. I got into a debate one day in the student union with a brother who was a freshman in the law school at Nebraska. And we were debating about the best way to improve the conditions that impacted black people.
Right.
And, my point was it was education, education, education. We have to equip our people with the knowledge and the skills to decide their own destiny. And so I was arguing education, and this brother was talking about, we have to impact the laws. We have to have people in the position to enact laws, to interpret laws, to enforce laws, because policy plays so much in what happens to us in life, right? So without yielding during that little debate, I was listening to everything he was saying. And at that time, there was a brother that grew up in the neighborhood who I knew was going to Creighton Law School. And I don't even know, I can't even tell you how I tracked him down, because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, but I was able to get a hold of this brother, and we just started talking, and he was telling me, Brenda, you would love this, you need to look into this. And so I just started to do some research around, law school and law school admissions, and found out that there was one last law school admissions test I could take that year because I was graduating that year. And I took it, and there were only like 2 law schools still accepting applications at that time, and one of them was Creighton. Wow. And so that's how I ended up pursuing a law career. Yeah, so that was not what I intended to do. I intended to teach, But one of the benefits of being in-house counsel at Union Pacific from 1980 to 1998 was that they were a civically conscious company, in terms of allowing me the freedom to serve. As long as I, did my work and, performed,
really good.
that's all. And so the whole time that I was at Union Pacific, I was elected to the school board in 1982. And I served on the school board until 1993. And then I ran for the city council in 1993 and was elected. And interestingly, in 1994, it was really odd. 1993, the city council was elected as well as the mayor. And it was that mayor's second term. And 1 year into his second term, he decided that, he wanted to spend more time with his family and was going to resign his seat in his mayor's position.
Wow.
And the city charter at that time provided that in the event of a vacancy in the mayor's seat, the city council would appoint the person to complete that term.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm looking at this and there were 3 years left on this term, right?
Wow. Yes, it was early on.
Yeah, it's very early on. It was 3 years into this term, and I just didn't think it was right, that literally 4 people were going to decide who was going to be the mayor for the next 3 years.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Because all it took was a majority vote of the council, to appoint the person who was going to be the next mayor. So I started exploring and researching, how to change the city charter, and was able to convince enough of my colleagues on the city council to pass a resolution to establish a vote, a special election, because the people have to decide whether to change the charter.
Okay.
And I was convinced if people saw the point that was being made was that why do you want to put it in the hands of
Just a few people.
a few people?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Didn't make any sense. And so the people voted to change the charter. And so the charter was changed to provide that if there was less than 2 years left on a mayor's term, the city council would appoint. If there was more than 2 years left, it had to go to a vote of the people.
Right.
And so in December, a special election was scheduled for December of 1994. And people, started coming out to file to run for that seat. And one of them, the people who was going to file was a former congressman from this area who hadn't lived here.
Wow. So you don't really know.
He was, from here, still had some connections here, but after he left Congress, he lived in Virginia, right?
Yeah, I see people like that.
Right, and I'm like, no, we need somebody who's been here, who's been working, and
the issues.
but I really didn't, enter the city council seat with any intentions of running for mayor, but I just, thought that the people deserved to have someone who had been in touch with critical issues that the city was facing at that time. So I ran in 1994, and it was crazy because it was December, and a drop of rain or a cloud, unfortunately, will keep us from voting.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
No,
Yeah.
right. So, and it was also a federal election year. So there was a big election already being held in November where we were electing a U.S. senator. And so it was just really a crazy time. And, I lost that election. And then the term ended in 1997. And a lot of people just approached me and said, although you lost, your message resonated around the city, and you ought to consider running again.
Yeah, because I
And-
know I was so proud.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
in
I'll tell you.
94, I was so proud. Like, I don't know if it came from my household or what, because I didn't know anything about politics. But it was just, I just remember that feeling of like, wow, like I didn't know that you could run for mayor.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's just being able to demonstrate to people, that we all have the opportunity to engage in government, in our communities, and have an opportunity to have a voice. So some very dear friends of mine were able to raise some money. We did some polling, and the polling indicated that if I ran, I had a really good chance of winning the election in 1997. Right. And we had an incredible and diverse, energetic campaign team. My campaign staff were mostly young people, which I really appreciated. My campaign manager was like 28, right?
Yeah.
So and so to have that energy in the campaign, and I will never forget election night. We had the election night gathering at what's now the Doubletree downtown, 16th.
Yep.
The ballroom was just full, and it was a mosaic. It was the blanket that is America. There were young people, there were old people, there were black, brown, yellow, there were gay, there were straight, and male and female. It was just, it was so moving, right?
Yeah.
And we were all disappointed because I lost that election by less than 800 votes.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, I lost that election by less than 800 votes. And one of the things, I used that story to make the compelling case to our community, African Americans, North Omaha in particular, that our vote matters, that it makes a difference. Because in that election in 1997, only 13,000 of the more than 25,000 registered African Americans voted. So only 13,000 out of over 25,000 voted. I lost by less than 800 votes.
So, yeah.
You see, if 15,000 had voted out of one.
Right.
I mean, right. See, so I always share that story to let people know that their vote matters. It makes a difference.
Did that make you feel like kind of disgruntled with
the
city?
No. I mean, it probably energized me, even more to become even more involved in trying to impact, because everything that I've done, I mean, I came from a home, my parents, I told somebody the other day, service is in my DNA. It's in my family's DNA. I mean, I'm fortunate. My siblings, they all were involved in serving. My youngest sister was in the health care industry, taking care of people. My younger brother was chief of police. Now he's head of the Urban League. Service. I mean, that's serving the people. And so our parents kind of embedded that in us. So everything that I've done, I've tried to be of service to the community and improve the conditions that they live in, addressing these issues that keep us from reaching our full potential. I was yesterday, the day before, I read this study that was released on Boston and whether Boston was racist. I mean, this is amazing. And they shared data on the wealth gap between white people in Boston and black people in Boston. And what the median wealth was for white people was like $249,000. For black people, it was $8.
Wow.
$8. So these are the issues that
Wow.
we have to keep raising. I mean, we have to embed in our young people what it means to earn money and establish credit and invest and be entrepreneurs and buy homes instead of renting, because that's how we create wealth. And we as African Americans have been at a disadvantage since we were brought here. in terms of being able to acquire and build wealth. So now that we have opportunities, to establish our own businesses, generate income, but we've got to support each other. We've got to support each other. We've got to be willing to work with each other, and so that's what continues to drive me, is to try to get us to see, what opportunity we do have if we just seize it.
Yeah, I think you're a great example of that, of the work that continuously needs to be put in, because I feel very energized when I deal with people in the city right now, because it's everybody's doing such great things, and it's I always see you everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a good inspiration to keep going.
But see, and that's the thing. I mean, we've got to support the things that are important to us and that can make a difference for us. We just can't. It's not a spectator sport.
Right,
What I'm saying? You have to get in the game, and you may say, well, I can't lead it. Well, but you can support it, right? And you can be there. It's like the other evening. And you didn't put a plug in for 30 Americans. That exhibit is awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
And the beauty, but also the education. In every piece there's a piece of us. There's a piece of our history. There's a piece of our experience reflected on those canvases, in those displays. So, we need to get our children to see this and learn this and understand this. And, admission to the Jocelyn over the weekend is free. So
it's definitely worth it.
It's absolutely worth it. But you got to, you have to do those things. And I really try to support young African Americans, who are entering their careers or at the early stages of their careers, with assisting them with professional development. My experiences from being at Union Pacific Railroad, I had the privilege of being at Union Pacific with a group of really conscious African Americans who decided to start what is now called an employee resource group. But then we were just the Black Employee Network, right? And we wanted to be the voice advocating for the hiring, retention, and promotion of African Americans at Union Pacific Railroad. And so, opening doors, reaching back and pulling folks up.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but that's the type of stuff that people take for granted now. We just expect it. We don't realize that,
it didn't come easy, right? And I wish we could, move away from falling into kind of an entitlement mentality. I deserve this. I remember this was many years ago, but we were having some problems during the summer with youth, and gang violence. And so some of the solutions were, employment. Absolutely. But I'm sitting at a table with people saying, and you can't pay a minimum wage. They deserve more than minimum wage. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, says who?
You start out at minimum wage.
It kind of feeds into that entitlement mentality. I walk into a fast food place and say, yeah, I'm here to be the manager, and I've never worked before.
I don't know how this works.
I don't know how this works, but I deserve to be the manager. But we need to have experiences. Mentoring is so important. I was blessed to come up at a time when I had some remarkable mentors. And one of them was the late Charles B. Washington, who the library is named after. Charlie, man, he introduced me and so many other young people in this community to some of the leaders and shakers nationally in the African American community. As the Urban Leagues, he had a TV show, he had a regular public affairs show. and he was connected to black journalists across the country. So when you're a young person coming up and you get to meet Lerone Bennett Jr. and Tony Brown, and he brought the late Harold Washington here, the first black mayor of Chicago.
Yeah.
You get to meet these people and you get to see, hey, I can do this.
Right.
They did this. I
I
can too. So it's just exposure.
Right.
Is so important, and to give our young people an opportunity to see what they can be.
Right. That's a very important part. That's like, because it's hard to like believe. Like I can tell you, but then if I bring someone that's doing it, you can
right.
see like, okay, yeah, they doing
Yeah,
it.
they're doing it, and then seize that opportunity to gather insight from them. How did you do it? What would you recommend? That I do. I mean, when I used to talk to kids about who said they wanted to become a lawyer, right? And sometimes the first question they would ask me is, "How much money do you make?" And I go, "Well, if that's your only motivating factor, you're going to be miserable, because you could end up in a position where you're making buku dough and be miserable, right? So and you have to follow your passion. But in terms of preparing to become a lawyer, I would stress to them the most important thing is you have to read. You have to be able to read and understand what you're reading, and you have to be able to write. You have to be able to communicate. So when I look at when they release the test scores for the schools, and how poor our young people are performing in language arts, and I'm like, come on, folks, that's communication.
Yeah, that's very
important.
important.
But it's so important. People say, language arts, it's nothing. It's so very important.
Yeah.
When you think about the gap when African American children enter kindergarten. There's research that shows that they've heard 1 million fewer words than their white counterparts. Right. We've got to talk to our kids. We've got to read to our kids. We've got to encourage them to develop a passion and a pleasure for reading. Right. And so I would tell young people, if you go into undergraduate with a plan to go to law school, you take those courses that challenge your mind, that make you read, that make you write, that make you reason, because those are the skills you're going to need to become a good lawyer. Definitely. I don't have to be a criminal justice major but I do have to be able to communicate written and orally, and I do have to be able to think critically, and that's why I urge young people they have to engage in the sciences and the mathematics.
Definitely.
That's what's teaching you critical thinking skills.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff, it gives you that confidence.
Absolutely.
When you step into a professional place, like you don't feel so out of place.
Right.
Like that's how I always felt. So what else do you have going, like right now? What's the project on the table that you would want to like?
The project I want to tell the entire community about is there is a new group formed called the Omaha Community Council for Racial Justice and Reconciliation. And this group was formed because this year, 1919, is the 100th anniversary of the lynching of Will Brown in front of the Douglas County Courthouse. And that's basically, and that's why I'm wearing this T-shirt today.
Yeah, that's a nice shirt.
This T-shirt is a T-shirt that promotes the Equal Justice Institute, which is located in Montgomery, Alabama, where the lynching memorial was created. And one of the canisters that's on display at the lynching memorial is a canister for Douglas County, Nebraska, and it contains the names of the 2 African Americans who were lynched in Nebraska. First there was George Smith, and then Will Brown. And since this is the 100th anniversary, this group of committed individuals to raising the conversation around racial justice and reconciliation has formed with the eye towards taking this entire year to focus the community's attention on race and justice and injustice,
Right.
and then culminating with a commemorative event on September 28th, which is the day that Will Brown was lynched. So I'm really excited about this beautiful community collaboration and what everybody's bringing. There's people from academia, from public service, from government, from youth serving organizations that are all working together on this project. So events about that are occurring in relation to this effort can be found on the City of Omaha's Human Rights and Relations website. Okay. So we're going to be calendaring events that are occurring throughout this year that are aimed to raising and elevating the importance of racial justice.
That's beautiful. That sounds good. That's a very touching thing too. Like when I learned about all of that stuff growing up, I don't know. It's still, I feel that same. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just something.
And there's still a lot of people don't know.
Right.
You know, a lot of people don't know, and that's what we want to do. Is we have to acknowledge our past and build our future.
That's beautiful. That's a perfect thing. Well, I want to thank you again for coming.
My pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And please come back anytime.
Anytime.
Definitely.
Pretty soon I'll have a lot of time. So
Yeah, you can come. We could do this. We could do this for an hour. There's so much stuff. Like I didn't even know like who the library was named after.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was someone in our community.
It's someone from our community, Charles.
Yeah, I don't know
B.
the story,
Washington.
so you have to come.
Yep, I'll come back. I love it. I love North Omaha. I love telling all of the stories about what it was like coming up in a community that was as vibrant as North Omaha was when I was coming up. And my hope, my prayer that I see in my lifetime is a revitalization
That's what I want to see too.
of North Omaha, particularly North 24th Street, the Deuce, which was our spot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank y'all again for joining us, and come back because we're gonna have to do this again. So with that, I'm gonna say peace. See y'all next time.
Take care.